So, but I would like to start with Helmut, though. Because if you very, very brief can explain to us who's on board in this partnership, how easy was it, and and I know already what are the difficulties.
Okay, who is on board? We have now 11 partners. Maybe I don't recall all of them just by heart. It's Allianz, Deutsche Bank, Daimler, Lufthansa, Here Technology, Giesecke and Devreux, Axel Springer, of course. There is Core Technology. Oh God, did I mention Allianz? I did. And so on and so forth. So really 6 or 7 DAX companies. And we started this story to tell it in 2 minutes in March this year. We had a board meeting and the Deutsche Bank guys were coming to us, the board member for private banking in Germany, with the strange guy from Core Technology, a beard like that, no hair there, even less hair than I have, but a very intelligent guy. They said, okay, they want to team up with us because they have a huge topic there, and we have the same enemy. They said, look, what do you mean we have the same enemy? Then they said, yeah, look at Facebook, and with the Payment Service Directive 2, which will come into place in 1 year, something like that, all financial companies will have a huge problem to attract the customer and the consumer. And then they said, look, we need to do something together. So even though we are on our spectrum, the complete opposite, the one Integra guys on the bank side, right, and the media guys on the other side. And then we said, okay, then let's discuss about that, the topic. This was the beginning of this journey in March this year. But I think we have been the second or third partner Deutsche Bank was talking to. Allianz, they talked already. And the biggest effort at the beginning was to convince Allianz Insurance Group to accept that we are not interested in health insurance data about the consumers. It's a completely different story. And we took a lot of time to explain to each other of us 10 partners what's the risk, what's the chance, what are the real data we are putting in together into this central platform, which is just age, gender, and the authorization data. All transaction data will stay with the companies because it's a legal requirement. Then over time we understood each other. We said, okay, there's really a strong overlap in the needs we have. Only very narrow topics where we see could be a problem, but we sorted this out, and then we started this cooperation officially on 2nd of May this year. And over the last month, then we developed the legal part out of that. We have to go through a certain legal process until the company is founded for several reasons, for trust reasons, etc., etc. And the company came officially into life at the end of October. So you can check out verimi.com where you can have all the information. What have been the problems so far? The problem was, we had enough money. The money was no issue.
That's nice.
That's good to have, so money is no issue. So we are a startup with money. This is maybe the big difference to a standard startup. The problem or the challenge was that, to ramping up a company is one thing. If you're a real startup, if you have a simple product, it's simple, right? You have 2 or 3 guys, you start to learn how to cooperate, to organize, and this is growing over the time. Here, you immediately had a startup with 150 people. So 100 developers in Budapest and in Krakow. One team was also one team which did the refactoring for some sort of the Google core technologies, so very experienced. And the second, or the other 60, 70 guys are working in 7, 8, 9 parallel streams to ramp up all things I explained earlier this morning: legal, the product itself, communication, marketing, the sales proposition, legal topics, etc. To coordinate this, to learn how to bring our ideas, our vision down to, let's say, board level -2, because they are sometimes too eager to do something. They are not thinking like us. And to coordinate this was the biggest challenge in the first couple of months. And of course, the impatience of the different board members, because it should go faster. But I think now, after this couple of months, we're in very good shape. The MVP is ready almost. We put it live at the end of December. So single sign-on, opt-in layering, and everything related to GDPR and e-privacy will be in place, ready to be used all over Europe. It's an international technology. It's web technology. What you say, you could use it globally. So from this perspective, it's quite good.
Everything has really happened within a year.
Yes.
Yes.
Now we are.
It's great. Yeah, we can. We will come back to this, but.
Sure.
It says in the program that this is supposed to be a fireside chat, and as you will see, there is no fire here. But I think that we should envisage the fire as the platform. Platform we're standing on is on fire. And Trond, you for a few weeks ago you voiced your frustration, I would say, in Campania, where you sort of urged the media business, why is there not any cooperation? And after you'd said that with all your experience, what happened?
So I think the background for kind of my frustration, probably the following. We have to recognize that Norway is a very small country in the world. So whatever way you calculate, we are probably less than 1% of the kind of market potential or the scalable number of users you can get to in today's world. So we have to basically see that the whole basis for value creation and competition in most industries are changing 180 degrees, from a local competitive game to a global platform game. Local competition to global platforms. I think most of us mentally have not made the whole journey. I think the lack of collaboration we see in the Norwegian media industry is a very surprising ramification of the fact that this industry has not moved all the way either. I have always thought, and some of the work I do currently is to try to help create technology platforms out of Norway that can become the top 3 in the world. And doing that in collaboration between the best startup talent and large corporates and the public sector. I think it's possible. Give you one example, surprising example. The oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry is far ahead of the media industry in terms of collaboration. Interesting. Why is that? Well, they always had license collaboration in the North Sea. They always did collaborative benchmarking for many years. So here's the example. We started a company called Arundo that do big data analysis in oil and gas only 24 months ago. We now have 58 employees in Palo Alto, Houston, and Oslo. We collaborate with Aker BP with their Cognite initiative. We collaborate with Norske Veritas with their quality of data initiative. We get data from all the different players in the North Sea because they're used to giving data access to different players. And we get the best algorithms in the world. So we take these algorithms to Houston, and Chevron is a big customer based on algorithms developed in the North Sea. You know, it's possible, but we have to have players in the industry that see the value in collaboration and working together, and also inviting in the best talent in the world, often from startups, and finding ways to work together. So this is what I'm lacking in the Norwegian media industry, and I think there is huge potential for much more collaboration. Put some of the kind of personal issues aside and just kind of look ahead to the future. But we can create some great technology companies coming out of Norway because we are digitalized first, you know. We have the most advanced user base. We have the technology. We can attract the talent. So why are we not doing anything?
Yeah, why?
So partly we're not doing anything because when people like me try to make things happen in Norwegian media, you know, nothing is happening. When I go to the oil sector, lots of things are happening. So there's a lack of leadership.
Okay, let's freeze that one. Stig, Helmut just said that everything in this huge cooperation in Germany has happened within a year. It's exactly a year ago since I met you outside here where you were displaying ParrotPlay, a login for all your TV channels and TV services. And I asked you, can that be used also to log in on newspapers? And then you bust with your developer, and yes, it could.
Yes, it can.
It can. And no, it can. And
Yes, we can.
Yes, we
Great
can.
slogan.
Just
Also,
to
who
say
I
that
lifted from.
we can.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, great. But after we met, not much have happened, has it?
Not on that sector. A number of things have happened to ParrotPlay, and they are here in the front row. Basically, for those of you who do not know it, my background comes from, among others, the broadcasting side of Telenor. So we looked at this and thought, everybody is now trying to make their direct link from the content service to the consumer, and everybody is not going to succeed in that. But more importantly, it is a mess for consumers because everything is fragmented. So what we try to do is, let's make something that puts the user in the center, i.e. user-centric experience, and make the user the king of content in enabling that user to access any content anywhere with a single sign-on, single login, search across multi-devices, multi-service and everything. And that's what I've been working on. We're very happy to announce that we are have this cooperation there with Adresseavisen as the test bed for it, and we'll take it further from there. But it's possible to do. And just to reverse a bit to Trond, yes, there is cooperation within the media sector. You could see that A-pressen and Alla went together with Eide. Schibsted companies, but others have done speed. I would have liked to have seen even more, because if I take one thing from you, Helmut, in your presentation earlier today, you said put the elephant on the table. And if we are to address the elephant in the room, it is that there are big corporate companies like Facebook and Google. They are not going to go away. They will be there, and we have to find what is our best and salient points of making our competition work when we are up against those formidable forces. And the only way to do that is through some sort of cooperation.
But Trond says that there is a lack of leadership. That is the reason for this lack of cooperation. Would you say then that there is a lack of user focus from the media business then?
Ooh, that's a difficult one.
It's yes or no, actually.
Being put to my test. I think we're all trying. It's not for the lack of trying, but sometimes we do not succeed. So if I may be a bit more than yes or no.
You can think about it.
If I can do a bit more. No, but look at VG. I think VG has been very excellent in what they've been doing, and they've had very much the user at the height of what they're trying to do. Because if you have a UX which is bad, you lose customers immediately. So it's not for lack of trying, but we don't always succeed.
Stig says, yes, we can. But Ingvild, I really need to address that question still to you. Can we? Are we allowed to? I mean, there is a huge insecurity now on the GDPR that is coming next spring. And what are the boundaries around us?
Yeah, good question. And I can actually answer the question you got relating to have we had too little focus on users. At least the EU has given us the answer to that. And that is, yes, we have not really been focusing on the user. And I mean, of course, it makes sense to share data and partner up. That is what we should do. But I mean, the big game changer with the GDPR is that it's not companies owning data. It's not Schibsted, it's not a media, it's not whoever company. It's each user owning his own data. That's the big new game changer. And that is why, I mean, what you do in Germany is really, really inspiring, because, I mean, the thinking with the GDPR is that end users shall know what we do with data, why they shall get value in return, and they shall be able to effectively control how and for what purposes data are being used. So, I mean, in principle, as long as we find good ways to really be transparent about what we do and give users really meaningful ways to make decisions along the way, I would say we can do almost everything. And that, of course, forces us to have a really good value proposition, because now we need to explain in a user-friendly and pedagogic manner what we do with data and why. And of course, then the users will finally start ask some questions about what happens to my data.
And you think we will be able to give that answer in that short time lapse that the attention of the reader is there?
Yeah, I think that is really the big struggle, right? Because on the one hand, we have a legal obligation to really give sort of complete and full information. And I mean, we all here know that what happens to my data as a user these days, that is quite complex. But I mean, one thing that has been made very clear from the EU is that this approach, I mean, having available 10 pages long privacy policies and expect that users read and understand that will not do anymore. So we really have to, I mean, as we do on all other areas, we have to start communicating in a user-friendly manner. And in relation to that, actually, the EU and regulators all across Europe really encourage companies to collaborate, come up with industry standards, use symbols, visualizations, stuff like that. and sort of agree on a common approach to communicate with user in a easy manner.
But are you then optimistic? I mean, thinking about one thing is that we have lots of text that we never read, and we agree. But now suddenly we will start reading, and then we will probably understand that, oh, they are sharing my data and they are doing this and this and this. Don't you think that the public will become suspicious?
Yeah, that might happen, and that's why I say that this really forces us to have a good value proposition, because now we have to explain and really sort of have an explanation that makes it clear that there's a value in return here. So yes, pure exploitation of data will not be perceived well, that's for sure.
What will be your very, very fast communicated value proposition from December?
I think it's very difficult to answer this in a very short sentence. I mean, first of all, to be very frank here, this e-privacy GDPR topic in the first hand is not a clear value for the consumer. Of course, he understands for the data, what we do with the data and so on, but first hand it's just additional work for him. So the very value proposition is going much beyond that. We say at the end of the day, we want to give every consumer in Europe a verified digital identity which he can use for every digital business process or transaction, starting with usual e-commerce topics up to any governmental process which we can imagine of, getting a new passport, getting a new driving license. But this takes some time until you're there, because first you need to start at lower level 1. You need to get the opt-ins of the consumer, which allows you then to work with that data, and then over the time, with different use cases, a typical consumer is going through his digital lifetime, will enhance his data in the net or in this Vermi, which will allow him to use it for a higher valuable process. That's it. It's not easy to explain. One comment what you said earlier. Of course, me as a consumer, at the same time, I know what will happen with my data. From my perspective, okay, if this is a value, then it's a value, yes. But the problem is, and this is the situation we are all in Europe, a Facebook consumer is not reading it anymore. They simply tick it off. My daughter is ticking it off. It doesn't read it. And we all, as we are sitting here, we need to explain on top to our consumers why they now need to opt in. And we made some tests in Germany. I can disclose this figure here. We made an A/B testing in one region for one product, and the bounce rate was 70%. We explained everything there. We tried to get the opt-in according to law, which we imagine could happen. Bounce rate 70%. So you can make now your calculation. Like, of course, this was done without incentivization. You could do it like in the old times. Dear consumer, if you opt in with us, you get a week in Ferrari driving for free. But you're laughing. But this will be the way how we have to try to get the opt-ins. Otherwise, we struggle in the fight with Facebook. Why? Because even our daughters are simply ticking it off without reading. And that's the problem. How do we manage that? How can we evolve and develop the opt-ins we will get from our consumer into a higher value proposition? And this is going beyond what you try to do here in Norway, just to get a single sign-on and login. That's not enough. You need to manage it further into the future.
Yeah. Trond, do you think that GDPR will be a showstopper?
No,
an intentional showstopper?
No, I think I come into this through an angle where I would look for opportunities in this picture, as opposed to just see obstacles. The competitive game around consumer data is changing at the moment. And I think it's changing a bit away from the GAFAs. And it might change actually in our direction. And what I'm thinking is that if in Norway, basically the different parties that rely on personal data and logins came together and basically created the absolutely best environment and ecosystem in the world, we could do it because we know how to do this. We have trust with our population far above any other market in the world. We have a digital population far above anyone. You know, we are using digital login with the 80+ population, much higher levels than in any other place in the world. In the US, they still use their checks and so forth. We don't understand. We don't talk enough about the opportunities. So we sit here, as scared chicken. And instead, we should look forward and have an ambition for 5 to 10 years old and use this as an opportunity. And that frustrates me.
Yeah. But just we have. But the bank industry is supposedly trying to make a successful cooperation within VIPs.
Yeah.
And I'm actually
forced to it. Yeah, partly forced to it, but and then again too small. So I'm very much with you that the different parties should basically. Norway is such a small country. When you do a public kind of login, you get these 5 different alternatives. I don't even know what bypass is, and there's a bank ID, and there's so many alternatives just on a public web page. It just tells you that we have totally missed the opportunity. So I would think bigger. And then, of course, someone needs to drive that, and we lack the leadership to do that. Clearly, a big gap. I'm happy to collaborate with anyone, but we should just go after it, because there's no one in the world who's good at this. And this market is going to change. Huge opportunity. So if someone wants to do something, I'm happy to collaborate. Remember, one person can make a big difference. Remember all the guys that started in the garage, Don't look for someone else to do it, Get moving. I'm supporting you.
But let's talk a bit negative on the leaders. That always makes people happy. How to deal with that? If we really have a general leadership problem, as I understand that you're saying, should we just wait them out, or what to do?
No. So this, I think, is a reflection of the fact that in Norway we're not used to a global media and technology leadership. So that has not been what we've been doing.
Even though we have the oil industry,
that's different. That's different. But this type of leadership we have not basically cultivated. We don't have a venture industry. We don't have an ecosystem around this. So partly the reason why there's no leadership is that we are not used to this. So we need to build it. I also think that we cannot do this only in Norway. We have to collaborate. We have to find other parties, other countries that are ahead and collaborate. And perhaps you find leadership there. It could be a cross-national effort. But I think it's more like the traditional leadership in Norway have been focused on their industries, a bit more kind of local. And this is a much more global game, and a technology game. It's just different. So that's what I see.
Stig, I've been trusted to bring news on stage from VIPs, and that is that VIPs in a few weeks, they are also launching login solution. So what we see now then is a few initiatives on a common login. So instead of bringing maybe all partners in one login, we have different choices of login. Where do you think this will bring us?
Very often we get fragmentation before we get consolidation, and we are still on that fragmentation curve. So I hope and pray for that consolidation is going to come, because we need that, and make it simple, because we know that consumers are craving for simplicity. It's been mentioned a few things. We have GDPR, and I hope sincerely that you are successful. We need that. So we got GDPR, and sort of everything else equal, that's going to mean and lead to less targeted advertising and more contextual advertising, which in itself is devaluing the advertising. The second thing that you've touched upon, both of you a bit, we got the new Payment Service Directive, PSD2, coming into effect, which basically means that you can move any account from anywhere to anywhere. It's going to be interesting to see in respect with the Paradise Papers and Panama Papers and everything else, but leave that aside for a bit. But it means very easily that you can get the payment services done through Google or Facebook, which basically means that VIPs and everybody else will be out-competed, or can possibly be out-competed. So the point is, we're at a watershed. So either we have to find good common solution and say that we do these common solution, we have to put them, I think, with trusted third parties, because we are very likely not to trust our biggest competitor. So we need some sort of a body of trusted third party. You can be owners in it, but it can't reside within one company. Trusted third party, find a corporation, and move on from there to make something bigger. Because quite literally, we've been talking about that data is the new oil, so get your own oil well. But the point is, the data you get, for instance, Nettavisen, using one example, the data you have on Nettavisen is very, very meager compared to the data you get in Facebook or Google. So whatever way we look upon it, we are going to be small in our pond. So the only way to do it is to build something on top of it. And to do that, I think you need a trusted third party. I think you need to run along with GDPR as much as you can, but not all the way. So please find the delineation where we can stop and say this is as far as we go and take it from there. But we need that.
Yeah, and to that, I think that is extremely important. I totally agree, and I think actually we have to learn from history here. I think that, I mean, in a broad sense, GDPR, we can live with that because, I mean, it's all about transparency and user empowerment, fine. As you say, Helmut, the really big struggle and headache is the e-privacy regulation because it's so rigid. For those of you who don't know, basically it will involve that we need users specifically to opt in for various purposes before we can drop a cookie. That's not viable. I think that the reason why the EU come up with that on top of the GDPR is because sort of the ads business had not behaved, to say it a bit simple. I mean, if you look at the US, they have had a quite extensive self-regulatory regime for many years, which has worked quite well, at least better than in Europe. I think that if we had been able to come up with something like that in Europe, we would not have had the e-privacy regulation. So I think it's really important to sort of avoid the EU regulators only thinking about one perspective, dictating what we should do. And I think that that even goes for the GDPR. There's a lot of broad provisions there. Take, for instance, portability, which relates also to what you mentioned. There's a provision in GDPR that a user will be able to ask for takeout of his data, go and plug that data in somewhere else. But, I mean, there are a lot of open questions still about what that actually means, what kind of format, how, etc. So it's really up to us, businesses going together, explain what makes sense, not sit still and just wait for regulators to dictate in detail what to do. And I think that's really a big and important step right now, not only related to login, but as such, really go together, find the good solutions from a user perspective and tell regulators why this is the way we do it, and not sit still and wait for someone to dictate what we should do.
That's one of the reasons why when we made ParrotPlay, we made certain that the data that you provide actually resides in your own browser, because you should have your own ownership to it, and that's important. That's just a small...
But that is not the value proposition for the partners that you want to bring in?
That is true, because it was
Isn't that really a showstop?
No, it was just so complicated to explain it to people, so we stopped explaining it. Still there, but we stopped explaining it.
Okay.
Just make it simple.
Okay, but where does that bring the GDPR explanation?
Well, that means because you got portability on your GDPR data, because basically, again, it resides with you. It's in your own browser.
But Stig, you know the media business probably better than anyone, and if you, I mean, to move the picture forward, what do you think? What do you think is likely to happen here? Do you think that someone will move into this trusted third-party organization? And who will make that first move, you think, if that will happen? Best guess.
Well,
easy question.
Easy question. Look into the future. No, Trond might be right, because it might be somebody from the outside coming in and doing it. We have a great corporation in Norway, and for instance, look at the banking side. You've been able to use the cash point from any bank irrespective of which card you've got. Great value for customers. When I lived in England, you couldn't do that. You have newspapers, they cooperate and everything else, but we still lack a bit of this one, because Schibsted are taking the leadership. And a number of people who are not in the Schibsted sphere do not trust the Schibsted sphere and say, like, oh, I don't want to be with Schibsted, so I'll find somebody else. And unless a third party can come in, and that third party is going to be Google or Facebook if you don't do anything else about it. And then you're going to take that trusted third party role.
Okay, Trond, could you elaborate on that? What do you think is likely then?
Yeah,
Where will we see the initiative?
I agree with Stig here that if we use my oil and gas analogy for a second, what we've done with Arundo is to basically come in and say that we are kind of the Spotify of the oil and gas industry. Because the different parties, they also have data, and they also have algorithms, with whether it's GE or it's a Chevron or a Statoil, but they don't trust each other to actually use that as a platform for industry-wide, basically, collaboration. So I do think in most industries there is a value in a more independent third party coming into the industry to play some of these roles. And then, you know, you can very easily have a few of the different industry partners collaborate by also investing. That seems to be totally okay in most industries. But I think in Norway, my guess would be that if you really make this happen, you have to have a more independent third-party initiatives, just kind of based on history, being very pragmatic as to where we are and the urgency of moving forward. That would be my best guess.
And that third party needs to be, sorry, but that third party needs to be non-intrusive.
Yeah.
It needs to be non-intrusive, because if the media company feels that this is somebody coming in and will take over our business, you're not going to succeed.
Right, because that was actually my question. I mean, knowing the media business to be very warm and welcoming to everyone. Sarcasm. It's important that it's someone that we trust still, even though they're from the outside.
Outside of what?
Outside of
Norway,
what?
Europe.
Yeah. But how happy were your companions when you approached them? Were they like, great, finally someone comes and brings in a solution on the table?
Basically, yes, because most of the partners already were somehow in this type of discussion, but they did not yet come to final solutions. And once we explained the concept, it's simply to be understood, right? And it's cross industry, you don't have these competition topics in there at the beginning, and the concept was fine with everybody. And what you said earlier, the third party coming in, if you talk about Verimi is really independent, it's neutral. It's at the beginning of the, let's say, European development. And our idea is really to say that this Verimi should be a European topic. It's not driven to make profit out of that. It's really driven by creating a European identity and having one standpoint, let's say, against this Facebook and Google's. And this could be the answer here. Technology is there, it's neutral, the business context is very, very clear. Nobody wants to have the data. We really want to just offer a solution here, which makes sense. And again, talking just about a single sign-on and login, it sounds very simple from technical perspective, but you need to consider, you need to manage this into the future. You need to manage each single login, you need to manage the data, you need to manage the development. And this is then multiplying the complete effort. And you have to ask yourself in, let's say, smaller companies, even though you have a login or single sign-on, are you capable of doing that on a long run? And this is then dividing, let's say, the good from the bad. And my solution in Norway would really be make some sort of competition. Let's bring the right CEOs together on one table and say, look, guys.
And the elephant?
I talk now in terms of solution, right? We know the problem, what could be one solution apart from many, and say, look, guys, we need to have one login, one SSO, we need to do it very fast. Even though today was a lost day, because the e-privacy GDPR will come every day closer, right? And we don't have a solution. Let's sit down on a table, let's come to one agreement, and we are very competitive on that. We say, look, we have to have one solution. We know there are some others already available in Norway. Let's get out the best, also considering the future and strategic topics behind that. Let the neutral partner, maybe like McKinsey, evaluate that. And we CEOs say, if McKinsey says this is the best for Europe, for Norway and so on, and also on the long run, then all CEOs are obliged to take this. So this could be a very easy way, driven by the leaders then, and this is not difficult. Yeah, everything else is what you said earlier. This is over the time it will concentrate on the market. This will cost a lot of money. We will lose, let's say, trust and faith. Consumer will watch us out and say, look, they cannot align and so on. So we lose. If we not come up with one solution in Europe, we lose against the Facebook and Google, and the consumers are watching us.
Is there any questions? Because we will have some time for questions if there's anyone. I guess there is a microphone that can be brought around.
Can I add one thing while you're waiting for the question?
Yeah.
You asked about the future. Vipps has done something which I think is great because they basically said that this was owned by one company and they've invited other companies in. If you're going to do that even to a greater extent, if you could take Speed by Schibsted, spin it off like a separate company, let everybody in the media industry own, so that everybody owns 2% each or whatever, so you've got 50 companies owning 2% each, stock listed in the future. Anyway, put some boundaries around it so it will remain non-intrusive into the media industry, but can be a trusted third party developed that anybody can use because it's not owned by a dominant player in the group. That's one way you can bring this forward. I tried to do that about 15, 20 years ago in the TV business because we had Conax, which was the conditional access system. So we took it to all the Nordic countries and said, listen, it's owned by Telenor. I'm willing to give it up. If everybody uses Conax, I'll give everybody X% of the company and we stock list it and we can take it as a common company. That was on the table 15, 20 years ago. And unfortunately, people turned it down, didn't want to do it. I think the time is more ripe to do it now because people see that there's an external threat, that unless you do something, you're going to be eaten. So I think, again, a trusted third party, non-intrusive for the industry, but encompasses the whole industry. That's one way that can be done and you can go forward. And then you have something of value that brings value into the industry.
To conclude that, this is exactly what we want to do. Because we've seen it's impossible to manage like today with a limited, we have 11 partners. Of course, we do it very well, but we want to have more partners, and then it's very difficult to have this partner around make decisions. It's impossible. So it's much better to say what you said, make an IPO or whatever, and the CEO should have very clear picture, frame he can act on, and with a very clear timeline and targets, and then this is possible. And this will come next year.
Ingvild, we're about to close up. Hopefully the audience gets the point. Cooperate. I know that you travel to Brussels every now and then. Is it your impression that they are listening and adjusting to what you're saying? Or don't they really know what they're doing?
I think that back then when GDPR was adopted, we ended up not too bad. They listened at least to some of the input. I think that, as I said, in relation now to the e-privacy regulation, which we have in Schibsted have been doing quite a lot of lobbying on, and I know Axel Springer has been doing the same. To say it like that, Raoul Grünthal, who now heads up the media division in Schibsted, he was an expert witness in the parliament during a debate now before the summer, and explained the implications this might have, and also, I mean, this is crucial for financing of the media sector. But several of the politicians basically said that we realize that that's fine. Now we are focusing on privacy. So I think that, and then it's of course challenging to argue about Facebook and Google and the competition we face when they have decided that now we are looking at one particular topic. I think that another issue that we raised, as you mentioned already, Helmut, is that even though the EU now comes up with requirements that will be the same for all players, Facebook and Google will have to meet the same requirements. The challenge is that we foresee that in practice, for instance, for Facebook, will be in a much better position to meet these requirements. So even though it's leveling the playing field in theory, in practice, no. So that's really the big challenge now.
Will you have GDPR in Alibaba?
I mean, as long as they are collecting data about European citizens, yes, they will have to meet the requirements. But I mean, good luck to the Norwegian Data Protection Authority running after Alibaba.
They won't be the first one to meet the locked door in China. Yeah. I will pose the last question to you, Trond. How decisive do you think it is for the future of publishing, the future of journalism, that the media business is able to cooperate on these areas that we have mentioned?
Well, it seems to me that it's totally super important.
That is a very good answer.
I think, it's not like we're starting on this journey. We actually are, more than probably midway in a journey that is just horrible for independent journalism. We need to bring back profitability into this industry. We need to bring back basically user activation and relevance. And we need to do that from a kind of national point of view, but on a global competitive platform. And we're quite far away, and it's very urgent, and we need to get to work.
Great. I think that we all agree that this has been a great panel. Thank you.
Thank you.